So calling Mr. Haug. Huh? I see him now.
Wait, credentials? Do you need credentials?
That's first, but I just want to make sure that Steve was up here. Okay, sorry. And the next item, I haven't called it to order yet. We're going to do a new credentials report, budget report, and then financial standards committee report. Just so those people know that they're coming. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you had a good lunch. We are now back in, I'm calling the meeting back to order at 1:50. And the first thing we are going to do is the updated credentials report.
The Credentials Committee reports that we have 115 delegates total. We will require 58 delegates for a majority, 78 delegates for a supermajority, and 12 delegates for a standing second.
Thank you. It would be in order for a motion to be made to accept these numbers as presented by the Credentials Committee. It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to accept the Credentials Committee report as presented. Is there any objection?
115.
Is there any objections to approving this motion? Hearing none, it's been approved. Now we will go to the next item on the agenda, which is the Budget Committee report.
Well, this one's pretty simple. We actually put together a budget and it went through the committee, and it was approved at our last meeting on November 12th. And we had a vote at the Executive Committee meeting on December 8th to have a few modifications put in. We added to the budget 6 months funding for a newsletter, and we also removed the domain and website services and transferred that over to the Candidate Support Committee side. So now that the Candidate Support Committee is coming in, I've got to look at that to figure out if we're going to have a separate budget for that side as well, and we probably will. Anyway, we also increased the budget for the state fair from $3,200 to $4,000. So we will be participating at the California State Fair this year and have a table, and I think it runs for pretty close to 3 weeks. So we'll be passing out literature and get some exposure for the party. I do have a budget, but it's kind of long and detailed. I think anybody who wants a copy, we can provide that. Yeah, it's also on the website. Any questions?
Well, that saved us back some time. So the next item on the agenda is the Financial Standards Committee report. This is a committee that's mandated by the bylaws, and what this committee does is looks at and audits the treasurer's activity for the previous year. So Tim Ferreira will be presenting that report.
Welcome back from lunch, everyone. Yeah! Got some budget and financial standards committee stuff going on. Oh, nothing like having a full belly full of food and listening to numbers, huh? Whew. So I'm Tim Ferreira. I'm the chair of the Financial Standards Committee, also kind of previously known as the Audit Committee. It's the committee that looks at the books and makes sure that the party is spending the money the way that we think they should be spending it, because not all of you can go look at the books. And so I'm kind of an advocate for you guys to make sure that we're doing what we're saying we're supposed to do. On my committee is Terry Floyd and Susan Aquino. I don't see either of them in the room anymore. Oh, there she is. All right. And Terry was over here earlier. Okay. Well, I was going to make them stand up and, take a bow because they did spectacular work on my committee. So everyone give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. Basically what we do, we look at the bank statements, we compare them to QuickBooks, we look at QuickBooks, we compare it to the financial statements that we submit to the state. We make sure that all that stuff matches up and that it matches up with what was approved. We didn't have a budget in the past to check it against, but now we have a budget going forward to check it against. So this is the 2019 convention. We're the 2018 Financial Standards Committee, which means that we were auditing the 2017 books. Everyone got that? 2019, 2018, 2017. Okay. Steve, that was his first year of being treasurer. So that's the year that he went and cleaned everything up. And we're here to report that he did a spectacular job. We found one or two things where he didn't categorize them quite correctly. We pointed them out to him. He corrected it immediately. Nothing went to the state incorrectly. It was just our internal bookkeeping. So as of right now, we can say there's no major findings. And the final report will be posted for you guys to view. Any questions? Uh-oh, I've got a question. So we're going to make sure that mic 8 is turned up. Kristen, do you know it? Okay, go ahead and try it. It's hard when I can't be there and here at the same time.
No volume yet. Waiting for the volume.
There you go.
There, it's getting there. All right. Actually, I had something for the budget, but like you guys rushed past before questions. I didn't hear any question.
Well, Steve's in the back of the room. Hey, Steve. We got a budget question. I don't know if it's in order to take that. I'm not the chair or anything.
Well, I tried making a point of inquiry but like you guys buzzed right past it.
He had asked questions, but it went past, so you missed it. So,
Sorry, I'm here to answer.
would you like to talk to him personally about that, or would you like to make a motion to suspend? Or better yet, can you let this agenda item complete and make a motion to suspend the rules to go back to his report to ask him a question?
Well, if there's, sure, I'll let this conclude. I don't think there's any other questions.
Point of order.
Yes.
I believe if we have just unanimous consent of the body, we can just go right to it.
Okay, I just didn't know if anybody wanted to ask.
If nobody objects, then
Since Tim is standing up here right now, I thought if anybody has.
Do you want to ask me a question and then Steve can answer it?
We're making this too complicated. I don't see anybody else asking questions.
Any other questions for me?
Seeing no other questions.
Thank you all. I am your humble servant. I appreciate it.
Okay, I guess I'm up. Fire away.
You want to formally, is that in order formally, or are you okay with just moving it?
We were no objections, so there's no reason to actually.
All right, so on the budget, was the budget increased during the year for anything related to the newsletter?
Well, yeah, we actually allocated some. I had contingency funds in there that weren't allocated to anything in case something like this came up. So we took some of those contingency funds and put them towards a newsletter, but the newsletter hasn't been produced, so the funds haven't been. Well, okay.
So,
we have
do you know how much money was budgeted for the newsletter?
Yeah, I believe it was $650 a month for 6 months.
And what month did that start?
In January, but.
And was any funds actually distributed since then?
We've only had one newsletter go out.
I understand that there's only one newsletter going out. The question is, has any funds?
Just for the one newsletter, yes.
So, can you explain the criteria of the budget item? To my understanding, during the executive committee meeting, it was a $650 per month retainer. Is that correct?
That's correct. But
And
the newsletter has to be produced and distributed before payment is made. So it's, well, in that particular case, yes. But
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
we did prepay for one newsletter, and that has been delivered.
Okay, so even though it's a monthly retainer, you reserve the right to not actually issue the retainer until a newsletter is produced. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And only one has been produced?
That's correct.
And it's already been paid?
That's correct.
That's all I was asking. Very straightforward, guy. I don't know why everybody's making it complicated.
No, I don't.
So.
And when it comes to money, I'll answer anything you want, and I can produce documents and show you whatever, just to make you feel happy. So,
okay.
Anybody can ask me anything on the money whenever you want, and I'll give you a straightforward answer. Because when it comes to money, I don't cut corners.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm just going to ask, are there any other questions for the budget committee report before I go on? just to be clear. Hearing none, the next item on the agenda will be our bylaws committee report. Unfortunately, the person, oh, there he is. When did you sneak past me? I'm blind. So the chair of the budget committee, or I'm sorry, the chair of the platform committee this year, at the end of the committee, now, bylaws, yes. I haven't drank. Anyways. Dr. Olson was the chair. They had other chairs during the course of the year, but he is the chair now, and he will be presenting this report. Is it ready to go up on the screen? Wait, unplugged in. Can somebody come turn on the projector? You can start the report without it, but we'll need the projectors on.
You're so short, Mimi.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, so I just want to mention briefly a little background to what happened during the committee. So the committee was made up of myself, Mark Hurd, Angela McCardle, Justin Quigley, and Kevin Shaw. We met a total of 4 times and over the year. During those periods, so Kevin Shaw was elected the chair of the committee initially, and then during the process of the committee, he resigned and Angela was elected chair, and then because she would have to be there doing minutes instead of up here giving the report, at the very last meeting, she resigned and I was elected chair. So this committee has had a number of chairs. And also Mark Hurd resigned from the committee on January 14th, which the last meeting was January 20th. So that's a little of what happened during the process of the committee. All right, so let's get on to the first item, which is listed as a no debate item. And it's a recommendation to change bylaw 7 section 4 duration of membership. It's just basically to make a correction from last year in the language to change the statement of annual membership dues are, and I'm going to go to the comparisons of the current versus the new. So change it from annual membership dues are good from the date of collecting organization the collecting organization receives the donation or the date of payment to an online payment service until the end of that month 1 year later. Membership expires at the end of the last day of that month. Annual membership can be renewed for no more than 2 years from the end of the month in which the dues are collected. So as you can see, in one part it says that we can do 2-year memberships, and then in the other part it says that your membership ends at the end of that first year, or the end of the month at the next year. So we needed to correct the language. So the new language from this would be annual membership dues are good from the date of the collecting organization receives the payment or from the date of payment to an online payment service. Membership expires at the end of the last day of that month. Annual membership can be renewed for no more than 2 years from the end of the month in which dues are collected.
So that is the first item on the bylaws report. It was listed as a no debate item. Mr. Lieberman.
I move to make this a debate item.
Okay. Is there would need to be 5 members that would need to sign on to that as well. Can the 5 members stand? More than 5? This will be a debate item? Yes. Okay, so now we are open for debate. We have 50, just keep in mind, I should have said this at the beginning, there's 15 minutes per item. and each person is able to speak for 2 minutes on the arguments for and against. Mr. Starr.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I think there's actually a drafting error here. I didn't know what the intention is. I'm going to explain what the drafting error is, and then I'm going to suggest a proposed amendment. So the way this is written, it says that the dues are good from the date the collecting organization receives the payment or from the date of payment to an online payment service, period. And then membership expires at the end of the last day of that month. So I think the intention was that it was going to expire at the last day of that month of a subsequent year. But the way this is written, if you became a member, let's say today on April 6th, your membership will expire April 30th of this month. So I would suggest that we amend this by adding the words in a subsequent year after the words last day of that month. And then if I can get a second, I'll speak to that. And
Okay, that would require a standing second. So we need those that are seconding that to stand, and we need a minimum of 12 people standing. Okay, we've got plenty. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded.
So basically, I think the intention here was that you wanted the membership to be good till the end of the month of the next year, or even the year after that, because it seems like we're now allowing for 2-year terms. So I believe that by having the words in a subsequent year added to the end of this sentence, I think it will actually satisfy the requests made by the bylaws committee. You may also want to consider adding a proviso that this doesn't even go into effect until the end of the convention, but I'll leave that for someone else to make that amendment.
Okay. Further discussion? Mr. Bowers?
On the amendment?
Yeah. This is on the amendment only at this point.
I'd like to speak in opposition only to remind the body that obviously we have to clarify things because no one knows what the word annual means. I'm really glad to see that.
Okay. I'm sorry, who called the question? Oh, Mr. Haidu. Okay, the question's been called. Any objection to calling the question? Okay, we are going to vote on the amendment only. All those in favor of the amendment, this is a simple majority vote, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment is passed. That brings us to the main motion. Mr. Starr?
So, Madam Chair, I just want to add a proviso just because I just think it's always safer to do this. The proviso be added that this doesn't go into effect until the end of the convention at which it's adopted.
Okay, is there a standing second to that amendment? Yes, Mr. Yes.
Is it the case that any changes that we make would not go into effect until the end of the convention?
All bylaws go into effect immediately.
Okay, I've been told by the parliamentarian, and also it's my understanding, that bylaw amendments go into effect immediately unless there's a proviso saying that it would go into effect after the convention. So this would be in order. We still need a second? Or no, we were at a second.
Yeah, how many?
We need 12. Yes? Okay, I'll repeat the motion. The motion is that the main motion is amended, which added the additional language that Mr. Starr added. The proviso is that this will go into effect at the conclusion of the convention in which it was adopted. And that's what we're doing now. Do we have enough people to second that? Can you stand if you're seconding it? Okay,
Point of order.
Yes.
Could you please ask the parliamentarian if an amendment constitutes a main motion or not?
No, and so it just needs a second. I thought on these it had to be. Okay.
I'll double check.
Give her one moment.
Right, it's just main motions, right? I think it's like rule 2 or 3. It's early in the rules.
Actually, you're right, it only needs a second. Or, we'll wait for her, but
Yes, just main motion.
I just looked too.
Rule 3.1.
Okay, so it just needs a second, and it had a second. So now we're into discussion on the amendment to add that proviso. Is there any discussion on that? Mr. Dean?
I'm having trouble understanding why it is necessary to say this, because this is just a clarification of a procedure we're already doing. In fact, if anything, we'd like it to go into effect right now, because if it doesn't go into effect right now, and if there's anybody who believes that the current rule is that people's membership expires the month that they paid, we could end up with a floor fight about a bunch of people who are no longer considered valid delegates because they paid their dues a year ago. I think we want it to go into effect right now.
Mr. Starr?
If there's no objection, I'll just ask that I withdraw the amendment for the proviso.
Is there any objection to withdrawing that? Hearing none, that brings us back to the main motion as amended. Is there any further discussion on the main motion as amended?
Point of information. Sorry.
Edward Bowers, Los Angeles County. I don't see the wording. I think I heard it, but I just want to...
And I actually was going to ask that question, so
Of the amendment, just the
No.
comma and whatever is going to come after the comma.
Are we able to actually be showing on the screen as these are amended like we did in the past?
I don't have the Word document.
Okay, well, I can...
He's getting the language from Aaron anyway.
Okay.
For his personal request, at least. It just adds in a subsequent year to the...
Yeah, so this would just add to the what's in the
think I got
report to in a subsequent year, and
Okay.
in the meanwhile, she is going to be opening that so that she can amend it. And Angela, the other thing we could do is just open a Word doc, copy and paste, and then put in the revisions that way. Okay, is there any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, we will go to a vote on this. This is a simple majority vote. All those in favor of the motion as amended, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Wow. No opposition. Passed unanimously. Will wonders ever cease? And it happened so fast. Dr. Olson?
So it's nice that the most difficult thing about this job at the moment, at least for now, is that every time I have to come up, I have to pull the mic up. But page 5 is where we go next. Recommendation number 2, Convention Rule 4, Area Coordinator Elections. So a little bit of history. Basically, last year we eliminated the positions of Northern and Southern Vice Chair, replaced them with just a single Vice Chair, and added 3 area coordinators. And we ended up mistakenly putting the elections of the area coordinators on the same year as officers, which means that pretty much every 2 years we end up electing a huge number of executive committee members, and it kind of makes it disproportionate. So this would correct that. Now, what the original amendment that we had written stated that all of the area coordinators would be elected at the same time. However, a member from the what is now the northern area had complained that the conventions that occur during odd-numbered years are usually in the north, and he thought it would be better to have those elections in the north, during those years. So when that election occurs, but now there's no actual rule that says that we have to do the elections that way. That's just been the way that we've been doing it historically for a while. So an amendment did pass stating that the southern and central area coordinators would be elected on even-numbered years, but the northern would be elected on odd-numbered years. So that's what's included in this report. And you can see the change on page 6 of what it currently says, and then it shows next to it what the rule change would, how the wording would look, so.
Okay, so we'll go to discussion on this bylaws amendment proposal. Is there any discussion? Mr. Dean.
Yes, I move to substitute the text that is at the top of the yellow sheet, which would have the effect of restoring this proposal to what they had originally envisioned. I'll just read it. It has the advantage that it the yellow sheet. It says substitute proposal for bylaws committee recommendation 2. This would put all of the area coordinator elections on 1 year, and then all the officers would remain on the other year. The main benefit of this is to better balance the elections. With what the bylaws committee has given us, there would still be 5 positions elected 1 year and only 2 in the other year. While with what I'm proposing here, it would be 4 and 3, which is as balanced as you can get with 7 positions. It also has the advantage of being about half the size of text in the bylaws. So all it would do is it would read in odd numbered the elections would be in odd numbered years, party officers, and to fill unexpired terms of vacated area coordinators, and in even numbered years, area coordinators, and to fill the unexpired terms of vacated party officers. So it would just make the 2 kinds of positions alternate the 2 years. It would balance things out. It would make the bylaws simpler. And I don't think the argument about the northern people is really something that belongs in our bylaws. There is nothing in the bylaws that says our conventions have to alternate exactly odd number, even number, north to south. First of all, we don't even have north and south anymore. We've got 3 different areas. Plus, historically, there have been a number of odd-numbered year conventions that were held in the South. So I don't think that belongs in the bylaws. And we also have a lot of people from the South here, and we'll have a lot of people in the North down there next year. And I think it's just a better, simpler, easier to understand arrangement.
Okay, wait. So that was an amendment, or I'm sorry, a substitute
motion to substitute,
and
which
that's
is on the yellow sheet, which the secretary has, and I think everybody else has. If anybody doesn't have the yellow sheet, there are copies on the back next to the bylaws committee report.
Been moved to substitute the motion. Is there a second? And it only requires a second. It's been moved and seconded. Now we'll go to discussion. Is there any discussion? Mr. Starr.
So as I understand, when you're making a substitute motion, that we can debate both the original motion or the substitute motion at this time. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if it was an amendment, it would be the amendment
Okay.
only.
So,
being that it's a substitute, you can...
So in this case, I actually want to speak against both the original motion and the substitute, and I'll explain why. First of all, I believe that the elections really do belong in the odd year. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of work that needs to be done leading up to the next year, which is an election year. So imagine for the moment that your area coordinators are not going to be in office until, late in 2000, mid 2020. There's only a few months between then and the election. You want them up and running the year before. You want your officers elected the year before. Also, as far as balance goes, there's other things that actually need to be done during the even number years. Think about it this way. We have to elect our national convention delegates during even number years. We have to select our national committee representatives. You'll do a presidential straw poll next year. There's a lot on the table that's done during the even years. So as much as I think that the proposals, both proposals, are well-intended and well-meaning, I think we're better off actually having our elections in the odd year. In fact, to the extent possible, if there are any other elections, I'd love to move them more to the odd year. So for those reasons, I urge you to vote down both the substitute motion and the main motion. Thank you.
Okay, additional discussion? Mr. Imhoff?
Yes, I want to point out while I'm up here that the yellow sheets and the green sheets are a result of the Santa Clara County actually having all of our members come together. And so when Joe Dean or others from my county come up to talk about this, it's the Santa Clara County endorses that. With that said, we support the Joe Dean substitute motion because we are now currently having March primaries, not June primaries. So regardless of what's happening in odd years and even years, I would argue the opposite of what Mr. Starr said is important, that we actually have to get this stuff done in even number years because of the placement of where the convention is going to be moved to, especially given the fact that the executive committee just recently approved having a 3-day convention and the times of year that that's going to actually occur. You're going to want that area coordinator stuff done in even number years. And again, you need that balance. We don't know, just to reiterate Mr. Dean's point, we don't know exactly where the convention is going to be, so we shouldn't factor its geographical location. And if we actually put geographical location in with the understanding that it has to be in the north on a certain number year and has to be in the south, then we're kind of accidentally amending our bylaws to pigeonhole ourselves into a position where we kind of have to do that because of this bylaw, where we still have the flexibility to have it where we think is the best place for that year, as opposed to because north, we have to do it that way. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Thank you.
Point of information.
Yes.
Which area coordinator elections will take place next year in 2020? If this bylaw passes.
All three.
Main motion.
Okay, wait. So, are you asking on the main motion or on the substitute
My question
motion?
is on the main motion because that will affect how I vote on a motion amendment, the amended motion.
Okay, so the way that it's written now, this would affect the way it's written now, there would be 2 elected next year and 1 elected the year after. Today we'd be electing all 3. The way it's substitute motion, all 3 would be reelected next year.
The substitute motion would make all 3 area coordinators elected next year.
Right, so it
the
would be
main
a
motion would make which area coordinators elected next year?
The main motion, Dr. Olson?
The main motion would mean that the southern and central area coordinators would be re-elected next year.
So they would be elected this year and elected next year?
Yes, those this year would serve 1-year term.
One moment. Yes?
I'd like to make a point of inquiry. Whatever passes right now, didn't we just establish with the last motion that it would go into immediate effect? So if it's an immediate effect today, we have elections tomorrow, your 2-year term starts tomorrow. If the substitute motion passes, how would we have it uneven? Because it goes into effect right away. Well, they're all together. All 3 of them are all in one shot tomorrow.
My understanding of the report was that this was written to go into effect next year.
Because next year's an odd year. I see.
Yes, so you're electing everybody to a 1-year term because it's vacant?
Yeah.
There's 2-year terms.
Yeah.
We're doing more.
Oh, yeah.
One moment, please.
So it seems to me that none of this affects this year.
Okay, none of this would affect this year.
Because essentially all of since it's a newly created position, effectively they are all vacant at this point, regardless of what the future schedule is going to be, and regardless of how long when any of the particular area is going to be electing in future years, they're all going to be elected tomorrow because it's a new position. Right. So then it depends on. This is just
if the main motion passes.
There are actually 3 possibilities here. That's what's already in the bylaws, which says that they all get done the same year. There's what the bylaws committee has recommended, which is to split them up. Well, 1 is one and 2 the other. And then there's the substitute that I've proposed, which is also all of them together, but on the other year. So those are the 3 choices you got.
Okay,
if nothing passes, they're all going to be on the same year, and it'll always be the odd year.
Correct. And just for clarification, so everybody knows what we're talking about, at this moment we can be discussing either the main motion or the substitute motion. You can speak on either or both. And currently, the way that the motion is written, regardless, if this passes, we would automatically we would be voting for all three this year no matter what, because even if it came into effect, we'd have 3 vacancies. And so next year it would go into whatever is decided today. Is there any, I'm just going to say, is there any questions on that before we go to further discussion? Seeing none, is there further discussion? Yes, Mr. Starr.
So one argument that was made that was because we have the primaries now moved to March, that is a further reason to adopt one of the, or both of the, either one of these motions. I'd actually argue the exact opposite. Think about it. We're going to have a convention in February, and you're going to have an election immediately in March. You don't have time as an area coordinator to prepare for getting people up to speed for that election. You want people elected as area coordinators the previous year so they can get up to speed, they can build up the county parties so they can actually get something done in time for the March of even year primary and the subsequent November. So I urge you to vote both of these measures down. Let's have our elections for officers in the odd years.
Okay, is there further discussion? Mr. Bowers.
Yes, Mr. Bowers, Los Angeles County. I was going to say that, oh my goodness gracious. I was going to say something. It was like, I just feel we should, I feel like we should go with the substitute motion. I like the substitute motion because it does sort of split what we're doing. And also, there are arguments being made about 1 month before the election, the coordinator who's newly elected is somehow going to set everything up. It seems to me that the area director should be doing a good job and the wheels should be in motion for if there is a change a month before the actual election, that's seamless. Maybe that person would win again. Hopefully, maybe we can think about a good continuity going on as opposed to everything being, oh, it's going to be disjointed every time we meet. So let's get on the positive train.
Okay, further discussion?
I'm Bill from Southern California. I just don't. This need to reshake up the whole structure of the way XCOM is going with officers. Basically, the coordinators are still officers. They're the main officers, and they all get elected at the same time. You can't have half of administration stay while the other half gets voted out. They all need to be voted together. They succeed together or they fail together. You can't have it half and half.
Okay. Further discussion? Ms. McCardle.
The area coordinator's position is not to do every single thing in their area. And so I don't think that elections are going to have as big of an impact as some of us might think. And if you're running for area coordinator, you should already have a pretty good handle on what's going on. No one who's coming in for an area coordinator position needs to be totally green and out of the loop. You need to know exactly what's going on in every county in your area before you stick your nose into that area's business. I am absolutely in favor of the main motion. I'm not in favor of the amendment. And I think that we need to bring more balance to our elections and to our conventions when things are held in the South. It makes a lot more sense to have elections that are pertaining to the South take place in the South, and the same goes for the North. Not everyone in opposite ends of the state can travel back and forth, and it puts a little bit of disparity.
Further discussion, Mr. Hinkle?
Mark Hinkle, Santa Clara County. I've been participating in bylaws votes for over 44 years, none of which have actually brought freedom in my time. So regardless of which way you vote in this, I actually do support Joe Dean's measure, but regardless of which way you vote, it won't make a hell of a big difference, and I call the question.
The question's been called. Is there any objection to calling the question? No, yes, you can. No, actually you can. Yes, that's per Roberts. She'll get you a citation in a moment, but we're out of time anyways, so unless there's a motion to extend time, we'd be going to a vote anyways. The question's been called, it was seconded, so we're going to go to a vote. We will be first voting on the substitute motion. The substitute motion was to instead of changing per what the bylaws committee had on their report, changing it to two of the area coordinators elected in even years and two in 1 year and one in the other. This would be all three of the area coordinators would be elected in the same year, which would not be the same year as the 4 officers. If there's no question on what that is, we're going to be voting on the substitute motion. All those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. It passes. That brings us to the main motion. The main motion is now the substitute motion because that just passed. So all those in favor of the main motion, which is now the substitute motion, is the main motion. One moment, can the secretary read the main motion?
The main motion is now the substitute motion.
It's correct. Read it as the substitute motion.
Elections in the following order: in odd-numbered years, party officers and to fill the unexpired terms of vacated area coordinators, and in even-numbered years, area coordinators and to fill the unexpired terms of vacated party officers. Substitute proposal for bylaws recommendation. You want me to keep going?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, is there any questions on what we're voting on? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, which is now the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, we're going to do a standing vote, not a count, just stand. All those in favor, please stand. Motion fails. I'm sorry? Oh, all those opposed? I'm sorry. I counted. Whoops. The motion fails. Okay, that brings us to the next item on the Bylaws Committee report.
All right, now you guys are making this fun. Okay, that first one was kind of boring. All right, recommendation number 3. So this one would amend Bylaw 15, Section 2, Bylaws Committee. So basically what happened, just again a little bit of history, because I like history. That's why I asked to form the Historical Preservation Committee. So anyway, a little bit of history on this one. This one was actually on the floor last year at the convention, and a delegate made a motion to table it for the following day. Was that not the case with this one? I swear it was. Anyway. Oh, that's right. Okay, I was wrong. That's a different one. I'll tell you the story later. Okay. So anyway, this one basically, it would amend the timelines of the Bylaws Committee. So if you look, it says the Bylaws Committee shall adopt its report not less than 70 days. This would change that 70 days to 30 days prior to the convention. And the Secretary shall cause it to be published on the party's website not less than, it currently says 60 days, but it would change it to 15 days prior to the convention. So it would allow the Bylaws Committee more time in order to do their work and to seek feedback from the Central Committee of the party. That's basically what it is.
Okay, we will go to discussion on this proposal.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Okay, Mr. Wolf.
Again, if everybody has their yellow sheets in front of them, in the second bold substitute proposal for Bylaws Committee recommendation number 3. Once again, this is a result of work that was done in the Santa Clara County when we had a working committee to review the bylaws changes. This recommendation, I'll start off, and it's up on the screen as well. Basically, we understand in the Santa Clara County the spirit of what was trying to happen here, and we feel that our substitute motion better enhances the spirit of what you're trying to accomplish. So halfway through, we say the bylaws shall adopt its initial report not less than 70 days prior to the convention, and the secretary shall cause it to be published on the party's website no less than 60 days prior to the convention. We then add the entire sentence, the bylaws committee shall adopt its final report, which may include corrections or improvements to proposals in the initial report, but shall not introduce new proposals, not less than 20 days prior to the convention, and the secretary shall cause it to be published on the party's website not less than 15 days prior to the convention. So this gets directly to the spirit of why everybody in this room right now has a bunch of yellow and green sheets of paper in front of them. The Santa Clara County wanted an opportunity to review the things that were happening in the bylaws, and we wanted to give these two pieces of paper directly to the bylaws committee to make said changes, so that way they could look at it and say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree, and make adjustments, and then we're not sitting here doing all these amendments from the floor, substitute motions from the floor. So that's the rationale behind this. We understand exactly what you're trying to get to with this, and I think this substitute motion better enhances that rationale.
Okay. There's been a substitute motion made. Is there a second? I see several.
Point of information, I didn't hear what the substitute motion was. Can somebody repeat it?
It's on the board, but
It's a blur to me from the distance.
okay. Do you want to hand me the yellow sheet and I'll, or
Some extra yellow sheets right over there.
can you hand me the yellow sheet so I can read the extras? I don't have one. Can I see a yellow sheet?
Can somebody bring a few extra copies of the
So there's yes, there's some extra copies right over here. We can bring them up to you if needed.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the addition to this, which is the final portion of this. It basically leaves everything the same in the bylaws that is there now, and the additional sentence is the bylaws committee shall adopt its final report, which may include corrections or improvements to the proposals in the initial report, but shall not introduce any new, introduce new proposals not less than 20 days prior to the convention, and the secretary shall cause it to be published on the party's website not less than 15 days prior to the convention. So that is the sentence that's being...
Point of inquiry. Actually,
and there was the word initial.
Yeah, the word initial. Yes, that's
I'm sorry.
very
so,
key.
Yeah, so it doesn't change the first part of our, but that would be the initial report, and what would be added would be this sentence of the supplemental report.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
It has been seconded, so we're at discussion. Mr. Child.
Yes, I would like to offer an amendment if that is in order. If not, then a substitute motion, whatever the correct parliamentary procedure is, to introduce a new...
You can, yes, you can amend it. You need to tell me if you're amending the main or the substitute, because right now we have two competing things, basically, so I need to know which
Right.
of the two you are amending.
I think it would have to be the substitute, because that's what we're discussing currently. So I'll...
No, we can, right now we're at a substitute and a main. You can be discussing either.
Okay. I will... yeah, I guess I'll amend the main motion then. Well, no, I should probably amend the substitute. Yeah, well, that's the dilemma, isn't it? Yes, okay. I will hold and wait until we vote on this one.
Okay, so you're not...
I will wait to be recognized until we've conducted this vote.
All right, so we'll go to the next person. Mr. Dean.
So I want to speak in favor of the substitute. Robert already explained one of the reasons for not liking what the bylaws committee is proposing, which is to make the deadlines very, very close to the convention, and that is that we wouldn't have an opportunity to discuss it before the convention. I want to point out another problem. I've been on many bylaws committees over the decades and many platform committees and similar things. And as a practical matter, most of these committees do not do a thing until their deadline is coming up. So if what the bylaws committee proposes gets passed, what you're going to see is a bylaws committee that does nothing all year until 20 days or whatever it is before the convention. And that's not good for anything. It's not good for the discussion. It's not good for developing the language. Everybody, has good intentions. We're going to get people appointed a year in advance, and then we're all going to work on it all year. Just doesn't happen. People have lots of things to do. So if you want a good bylaws report, what this substitute does is says it sets a deadline well in advance of the convention, forces the bylaws committee to get its act together, come up with a list of proposals, but it also then allows those proposals to be perfected, but not with any surprises at the last minute.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, I'd like to speak against both. I like to point out that at least in the last 10 years, I've served on bylaws committee a few times, and we've always done the job through the whole year. I've not had his experience. I like to point out that there has been a couple years where committee has decided not to submit a report, that nothing made it through committee, not that we couldn't follow through what was stated. The other problem I've had is the biggest complaint with the secretary over the years is that they needed more time in order to get this stuff on the web page. Now we want to cut it down to 15 days before the convention. It just makes no sense. This whole thing just makes no sense. There's a reason for it to go out that long, so we as members have time to digest it and see it. Shortening it just eliminates that. So.
Okay, were you next, or was Mr. Castaneda?
Why don't you be next?
All right, I'll speak in favor of it, and I would like to comment on the if the bylaws committee work or not. I served last year's committee, and we started working from day one, and everything I've seen from the websites and all that is that this committee this year did their work from day one when they were appointed, and I've served in others in the past where that was not the case.
Okay, Mr. Starr.
So I'd like to speak against both the main motion and the substitute. The main motion, because frankly 15 days notice prior to convention is just simply too short for people to make arrangements to want to go to a convention in order to say, hey, there's a proposal, I really have a problem with it. You can't get the cheaper rates for for planes, and you can't get cheaper convention packages if you make your decision in the last 2 weeks. So you need to know well in advance. 60 days seems fine for knowing what the proposals are. The problem I have with the substitute proposal is that while I think it's well intended that we would get out an initial report and then later modifications, the reality is how human beings will work is they'll say, oh my God, let's get something in writing just before. It won't be perfected proposals. It will be, let's just get something so these are placeholders, and we'll come up with the real proposals later. So it really won't result in a better outcome as far as proposals go. I think your best outcome is you just simply need to keep with the existing rules, and you need to have people who stay on top of it. At the national level, they're very good about getting bylaws committee proposals published months in advance. And since the bylaws committee is chosen less than 60 days after the close of this convention, you really have about 8 months to do the work. There really isn't any excuse as far as I'm concerned. So that's my argument. I do want to ask a parliamentary question, though, at this point.
Yes, sir.
At one point, you mentioned that a simple majority is all that's needed to adopt these bylaws proposals, and I believe the way I believe the way bylaw 26 it is.
It's a simple majority of all voting delegates.
It says actually differently. If you read bylaw 26, it's a majority of all registered.
That's what I said.
That's different from a simple majority.
It's 58.
So it's 58.
It's 58.
And in addition, if I understand correctly, the substitute motion, because it is substantive in nature, will require a 2/3 vote to be adopted.
It's a substantive amendment. I think you're right, under Rule 26, we'll double check that, if it's the main motion.
Right. So
it applies to whatever the main motion is, but I'll double check Rule 26, but I think substantive changes do get the elevated standard.
They do. It would, and would this be substantive? I guess it would, because it's causing an additional provision. I thought it wasn't really as substantive.
I think the original intent of my, to a point of inquiry, the original intent of choosing substitute as opposed to amendment was because it didn't have that higher threshold.
Substitute is just a formative amendment. It's amend by substitution is the full term, but substitute motion is an amendment.
Okay. So, yeah, I would be curious about what that ruling is. I mean, if you can cite.
So, I mean, you mean which one says a substitute motion is an amendment?
No, what makes it a 2/3? If you can cite what makes it a 2/3.
Maybe I should use a mic for this.
Okay, I'm going to defer to the parliamentarian to answer this question.
Sorry, I could relay it to her and she could say it, or I could just say it directly. So part of bylaw 26 says bylaw changes proposed from the convention floor without prior notice or substantive non-technical amendments made to the bylaws committee report by the bylaws committee subsequent to the report adoption deadline shall require a 2/3 vote of all registered delegates to pass. So it's substantive amendments to the bylaws committee proposal meet the higher threshold.
And I believe that Mr. Imhoff's question, if I may rephrase, is what part of Roberts states that a substitute motion is still considered
I don't know if that's
amendment.
relevant if our bylaws will supersede anything
I think it
Roberts
does,
does
but I'm just
anyways.
saying that well, but a substitute motion is a amendment. It's a form of amendment.
That's satisfactory then.
Okay. Mr. Imhoff, you want to speak?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to call the question because yeah, I'm calling the question.
Okay. The question's been called.
On the substitute, yeah.
Yeah, are you calling
I'm not calling
it
all questions, I'm just calling the question.
No, are you calling all, or are you specifically calling the question on the substitute motion?
I'm calling the question.
On the substitute motion.
Yes.
Thank you. The question's been called on the substitute motion. Is there any objection to calling the question? I'm sorry? Yeah, right now it's a majority to become the main motion. If it passes with a majority, it will be substituted for the main motion when it goes to be voted on as a main motion. Because it's substantive change, it will require a 2/3 vote.
And a majority of registered delegates.
And all of these votes, by the way, just to be clear, in our bylaws, it's a simple majority of all registered delegates. It's also a 2/3 of all registered delegates. So it'll either need 58 votes for this, and it will need 78 votes if it becomes the main motion. And the question's been called. There were no objections, so we are going to go to a vote on the... Yes, sir. No, that one wasn't a substantive change. That only required a simple majority either way, and it did not get a simple majority. That is the case in this. So are you understanding what we're voting on now? That is correct. That is correct. That is correct. Okay, we are now going to go to a vote on the substitute motion. This requires a simple majority to make the substitute, and if passed, that will become the main motion. All those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, the substitute motion has failed. We will now go to the main motion. Any further discussion on the main motion as originally presented?
Yes, Starchild from San Francisco. Now I would like to propose amending the main motion. I propose we add a sentence saying public notice shall be given at least 48 hours in advance of any bylaws committee meeting. And if I may speak to my reason for this proposal, we were told there's been 4 meetings of the bylaws committee. As someone interested in the bylaws committee proceedings, I didn't hear about these. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. I think that it's important for people to be able to know when committee meetings are happening and participate in those meetings if they have interest in the subject matter. It's good transparency and good governance. So I encourage people to support this simple change.
Okay. An amendment has been moved. Is there a second on this amendment? Okay, it's been moved.
Public notice shall be given of any bylaws committee meeting.
At least 48 hours
Meeting
in advance.
at least 48 hours in advance.
There's a point of order. And I believe that you are correct. I would say that this is not germane. This would be a substitute motion, if anything, right? It's not a substitute, it has to be a germane. Okay. Yeah, this is a separate issue because this is now requiring an additional requirement that's not something that's at issue in this amendment itself, so it's not germane. So therefore, that substitute motion is out of order.
It would be the same vote threshold requirement in either case, correct, or no?
For what? Well, it's been ruled out of order that it can be an amendment.
Okay.
Anybody else want to speak in regards to this motion, which is the main motion as presented by the Bylaws Committee? Mr. Kokesh.
Hi, I'd just like to speak in favor of this in terms of this is the people who are doing the work asking us to help make it easier for them to do the work, as opposed to make it easier for people to debate about it at state conventions. If they're asking for this, I say make it easier for people to do the work so we don't have to spend as much time debating it in convention, and I support the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll speak against the proposal on the floor. Having the Bylaws Committee proposals available on the website 15 days in advance of the convention is much too short a time. And if it's true that this Bylaws Committee was able to do its work in 9 months or whatever, they don't need one more month if they're working all year. And that's what we've heard, is that they were able to do it under the current rule. In fact, we see the evidence of it. So this is not a necessary change. All it's going to do is make it harder for people to understand what's coming up at the convention.
Time has expired on this item, so unless there's a motion to extend, the question has been called. Is there?
They weren't correct.
But the time has expired on this. The thing that would be in order is if somebody did want to make a motion to extend time, that would be in order.
Madam
Calling
Chair.
the question, yes?
Motion to extend time 5 minutes.
There's been a motion made to extend time by 5 minutes. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to extend time by 5 minutes. Is there any objection to extending time? There's been objection, so we'll go to a vote. This only requires a simple majority. It's a 2/3 vote to extend time. So all those in favor of extending time by 5 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Time will not be extended by 5 minutes. We're going to go to immediate vote on the motion as presented by the Bylaws Committee. Is everybody understanding what this bylaws is? Everybody knows what they're voting on, correct? Okay, we're going to go to a vote. All those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. The motion fails. And we will go to the next item on the bylaws.
All right. So, this is recommendation number 4, page number 9. It would amend bylaw 15, section 3, platform committee. So basically, what this does is it changes the wording to add some words and take out some words, but I'll go over those. I'm sorry, I got 3 hours of sleep last night. I'm tired. And not from partying, from working to get this convention going, so, unfortunately. All right. So I'm going to read it directly from this. The platform committee shall consist of a coordinator and these are the words that would be added, no more than one delegate from each county central committee. And then it says county central committees may choose as many alternates as they wish, which in the past there was no mention of alternates, though it's common practice for counties to elect alternates. to the platform committee. So this would just kind of bring that in line with actual practice. A coordinator shall be appointed by the executive committee at least, and this would strike 30 and add the word 90 days before each convention. The county delegates shall be selected, and then this would strike at least 30 days prior to the convention in such a manner as each county central committee shall provide. This will allow for a platform committee to actually take a substantive look at the platform and make really good recommendations, and do more work throughout the year instead of basically, I mean, I've seen some platform committees that basically meet here at the convention, and that's it, and it's really hard to get the work done when you're not meeting in advance. I know that they've been working really hard this year and done good work, and I want to thank Chuck Ham, who was the coordinator this year for the platform committee, for getting that going, because I know last year I don't think we even had a committee meeting. So anyway, that's what it says.
And you're really tall. Okay, so now we will go to discussion on the amendment. And do we have discussion, Mr. Starr?
Yeah, there's some drafting errors here. First of all, I think it's a problem if you don't have a deadline for the county delegates to select there's a problem if you don't have a deadline to select for the counties to select their delegates. And the reason for that is until the deadline has passed, unless every county had selected somebody, you can't meet. So either a deadline approaches, in which case you know who the population of the committee, in which case at that point you can start to do work, or everybody has selected somebody. You've never had a situation where all the county parties have selected somebody. So the deadline for selecting this will be the point of the convention, which means that this committee can never actually meet. So you can't actually get any work done. The other problem is that alternates are not a concept that's actually described in Robert's Rules of Order. This is something where when you have alternates, you actually have to come up with rules for how they work. How does it work? Are they ranked? Do they all get to make motions? Do they get to vote? How does it work? Unless you actually spell those out, then you don't really have a mechanism for doing this. And lastly, without a proviso, this thing actually goes into effect immediately, and I assume that's not what you'd want to do. You'd want it to go into effect, because at this point, you don't even have a platform committee if not everybody has selected everybody.
But we had one for last year, which would still be submitting its report.
It's still doing it now, right? So in theory, the platform committee isn't, okay, supports. The main things, though, are there's no deadline, and that kills it right there. Without a deadline for selecting people, that's a real problem. The one rule change I would propose, if you're going to do this, is changing it from 30 days to 90 days for the coordinator. That's a good idea. But right now, I think the execcom already selects people well ahead of that deadline.
Okay. Would you like to offer that as an amendment, or are you just saying it?
Sure. I guess substitute, just the only change is to change the word 30 to 90. So a coordinator shall be appointed by the executive committee at least 90 days before each convention. Nothing else would change. That would be the only change to this. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying the only change, it says instead of doing everything here, the one change is changing 30 days to 90 days in that paragraph that starts a coordinator, in that sentence that starts, a coordinator shall be appointed by the executive committee at least 90 days before each convention. I propose that as my amendment.
Is that an amendment or a substitute motion? It's a substitute,
So
I would believe.
Okay, we'll make it a substitute then.
Okay, is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. We will go to discussion. At this point, you can speak on either the original made motion or the substitute motion.
Point of inquiry, according to our bylaws and everything, since it seems like this is a technical change to what was proposed as opposed to a substitute. Can you clarify that, please? This speaks to like the 50% versus 2/3.
I would say my ruling on this would be that this is not substantive. This would not be substantive, so it'd still be a majority vote.
So can you clarify where it would be a majority for the delegates?
I'm sorry?
Can you clarify where it would be a majority for the delegates, please?
Yeah.
Let me just say something and then you agree with me. To clarify, this one is 50% to allow it to become the main motion.
It's 50% plus one. It's a simple majority.
And then as the main motion, it would also be
Correct.
50% plus one. That was the
Correct.
clarification I was
Okay.
asking.
Thank you.
It's 50% of those voting to make it the main motion, and 50% registered delegates to become adopted.
I understand that, but we just had a 2/3/51, so I wanted to clarify that's not the case here.
Not in this one.
All right.
Simple
I would
majority,
like
then
to-
50%. Simple majority of registered delegates.
At this time, I'd like to speak in favor of the substitute motion. It is spot on point, and again, the Libertarian Party of Santa Clara County agrees that when you don't set a deadline for issuing delegates from counties, that is very problematic. Certain counties may have the absolute ability to intentionally not pick a delegate. And anybody that's been in this party for just a little bit will know that certain counties will take absolute advantage of that. The substitute motion is imperative, or we don't pass this suggestion at all, in our opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ham?
Hi, my name is Chuck Ham. I am the coordinator. Mimi appointed me, the executive committee appointed me, when was it last year that you appointed me?
It was at the...
Late last year sometime.
It was at the September meeting,
So we
which
actually,
was well in advance of the 90 days.
And I wanted to speak in support of the motion and the substitute because of my experience. We were able to get a lot of work done before the counties actually got their delegates selected, but that was a big issue because we weren't doing any votes. We weren't doing any actual business because the counties had not selected their delegates. Now, another thing I'd like to point out is that this counties selecting their delegates is actually a county affiliate, whatever you want to call it, bylaws issue, because their bylaws restrict them as to when they can or when they will be voting to choose their delegates. So when this motion passes, which I expect it will, or I hope it will, the county should be on notice that they probably ought to change their bylaws too. But we have a really good recommendation for tomorrow because of the work that Mimi did to get this whole thing started. We've had plenty of meetings, voting, discussion, and a report that got submitted on time. We wanted to get it published earlier. I would suggest some kind of a future amendment, but along these lines also, to have a deadline to publish it so that we didn't get that part done this time. But anyways, I speak in support.
Okay, and...
We're discussing both matters because one's a substitute motion?
Yes,
Okay, I'm sticking to the original main motion.
You can be talking about one, the other, or both.
Okay, Dave Bowers, Los Angeles County. I'm speaking to the original motion that came out of the platform committee. I'd just like to say that when someone says the committee cannot do its work because counties don't send people to the committee, that's not true because it just says no more than one. So if one county sends one person and there's a coordinator and nobody else does anything, 30 days, they don't do anything, just sit around doing whatever, I don't know why, then that's correct. There could be two people coming out with a bylaws report or maybe just the coordinator themselves. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't expect that to happen. I don't think people would want to behave that way, but if that's the way they do and people think that, then that's I don't think that's a good reason not to vote for the main motion.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Call question.
Question's been called. Is there any objection to calling the question? Hearing none, we will first be voting on the substitute motion. This will require a majority vote, and to be clear, this is a majority vote, period, of the people here, simple majority. All those in favor of the substitute motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. The substitute motion passes, so that now becomes the main motion. This will require a simple majority of all voting delegates, which is 58. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. The motion passes, the substitute motion passes as the main motion, and we go to the next item on the bylaws committee report. Do you have a point of information or a point of inquiry?
I would like to move to suspend the rules for purposes of consideration of a motion similar, I've reworded it a little bit to what I was previously moving that was ruled out of order at that time.
Okay, there's a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second? Is there any objection to suspending the rules? It's been objected to. This would require a 2/3 vote. Is there discussion on suspending?
May I
no
state the
debate.
purpose
Sorry, no
for
debate.
the what would
you may,
be? Okay.
You can state the purpose, but not an argument.
Okay. This would be to add under bylaw 15 committees a new section 1 with subsequent sections being renumbered with the title Committee Sunshine Policy. It would read, all LPC committee meetings shall be open to party members unless an executive committee vote is taken to allow a secret meeting, and 48 hours public notice shall be given prior to the start of any committee meeting.
Okay, so we will go to a vote on suspending the rules to take this item up. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, we will not be suspending the rules, and we will continue with the bylaw committee report.
You're really short, Mimi. Grow. All right. All right. Recommendation 5, which is on page 11, which would amend bylaw 9, section 1, county organizations. Basically, what this does is it adds language which would clarify what would be required for a county central committee to be recognized by the party as an affiliate of the state party. I'll just read the language that it would, because basically this just adds language, so I'm just going to read it as it would look if this passed. The party shall be divided into county organizations. Each county may have only one organization, which shall have its own county central committee. A new county organization may be recognized by the party if it has held an organizing meeting to elect its officers and adopt bylaws. Notice must be given to its members at least 30 days, but no more than 60 days in advance of the meeting. Such notice shall specify the reason for the meeting and a time and place reasonably accessible to its membership. The notice shall also be sent to and received by the party secretary at least 30 days in advance of the meeting. The election results shall be reported to the party secretary within 15 days after the meeting.
Okay, so that has been proposed. Is there discussion on this bylaws amendment? Mr. Imhoff.
Yes, I'd just like to make some technical amendment to the proposal.
Okay.
So in the proposal, you're adding a section 5 with an A, B, and C. In the A, it is, in this modern times, it's ambiguous what mailed means. Notice must be mailed to its members at least 30 days. And unless somebody shouts otherwise, I'd like to substitute mailed with electronically mailed. People are grumbling, okay, then postal mail, whatever. But we should say one way or the other.
That is already covered in bylaw 4D, that all references to mail can include electronic mail. That, I believe, was an amendment that passed last year.
Okay, so strike that part. And then the rest is just technical. People being loud next to me. So the other ones in B, C, and the last paragraph, any reference to the word party should actually be state. So for example, the notice shall also be sent to and received by the state secretary at least 30 days in advance of the meeting, as opposed to the party. Which party? The county party, the state party, the national party?
That's covered in bylaw 1.
So
a capital, that's covered right at the beginning. That capital in S means state party.
I understand that.
I mean, capital in P means state party.
I understand that, but I'm still putting forward any, regardless.
Okay, well, you can still put that forward.
So
your substitute motion, you can.
So the
Or your
substitute motion,
amendment.
yeah, my amendment motion, basically in B and C where it says party, I want to say capital state, and in the last paragraph where it says parties, it would say states executive committee, just for clarification, even if it is defined elsewhere. That is the amendment motion.
Okay, is there a second on this amendment?
Nobody.
Hearing none, it dies for lack of second.
Point of information?
Yes.
Okay. Ted Brown, immediate past chair. The proposal seems to not notice that the current Section 6 actually does have an election procedure already listed in there, and it's not listed as the prior existing language in the Bylaws Committee report.
Yes, point of
Is
order.
that correct? No, I'm just asking, where, was there a reason to leave that out or to hide that or what?
Okay, so.
No, the question is like the current, okay, in the report, it says what the prior language, the existing language is and what the proposed language is. What's listed for the existing language is not correct. The existing language has a whole election procedure already in there, and I'm just wondering, is there a reason that was left out?
That would be a question for the Bylaws Committee to answer. I'm going to allow the question because it wasn't completely put in, unless you want to say that you want to say that it's out of order to do so.
It's out of order. I mean, point of information, you ask a question of the chair. Immediately, you don't proceed with anything. You ask, could you explain this to me? Oh, it's misphrased. Yeah, he misphrased everything.
Okay. Yeah, so, okay, as a point taken, I'm noting that, that's well taken, and. Yeah, and that's what it sounds like, and he was properly recognized. So now we will go back to discussion, and the next person is in line.
Sandra, Contra Costa County. I'm just confused, and probably it's because there's not enough information here for me, but I'm assuming that the word members has a definition somewhere, and its is used several times in here, and I don't know when it says its members, whether it's talking about the members of the state party or the not yet recognized organization that is sometimes called a county organization, sometimes just called an organization, whether it's talking about an undefined member of that group. So it was just really hard for me to parse this.
Okay, would you like to make an amendment, or are you just stating
No,
that
but
you're-
I'm wondering if I'm missing something.
I think you're missing bylaw 2.
Okay.
Okay, so if that's just a question, you can refer to the bylaws to get the answer to that question if it's not an amendment. And we'll go on with arguments.
Yes, I would like to argue against the Bylaws Committee recommendation. First of all, I think that it's, as written, it is unnecessary. It is not solving the existing problem because, as Ted Brown pointed out, there is a section which is not quoted here that already defines what it means for a county organization to become active by electing its officers. So all of this language that's proposed to be inserted here is solving a problem that doesn't exist because we already have a procedure. However, it doesn't do it in quite the same way, and that is something that bothers me. Under the way the bylaws are currently constructed, county organizations arise from the existence of county central committee members. They are not created separately by the state executive committee. They have their own existence. There is a need to recognize which ones are active enough to have officers, but they do not need to be affiliated with the state party. That is a misunderstanding. I've been hearing this word affiliate over the last year, and that's wrong. The county organizations are not affiliates of the LPC. The county organizations are organic components of the LPC. The LPC consists of all of us from all of the counties. So the very notion that the state executive committee somehow gets to decide whether a particular county is affiliated with the state is just wrong. It's inconsistent with the definition of how membership in this organization exists as the bylaws state. And because of that misunderstanding, the proposal that the bylaws committee is putting forth actually makes it possible for the state executive committee to not accept a county organization, even if they have complied with these rules. The language that the bylaws committee proposes says, after the above requirements have been met, the party executive committee will put forward a motion to recognize the new county affiliate. It doesn't say they have to vote for it. They'll put it up there, and then they say, well, we don't like the way you're organized. We don't like who your chair is. We don't like something. That's wrong. This is supposed to be a grassroots organization. The counties are just as much part of the state party as the state executive committee. They have their own legitimacy coming from the fact that they have members, and this thing doesn't recognize that.
Okay, I believe that was Mr. Starr ahead of Gail? Okay, just making sure.
Okay.
Where you're standing, it's hard for me to tell sometimes.
Sorry. I respect Joe Dean's position. I disagree with him because bylaw 2H specifically says that the party shall promote, charter, and coordinate county central committees throughout the state. So actually, the state party does charter those. I'm not happy that fact, but that is what we have. I'm opposed to the proposal because I don't think it solves any problems. And I think it actually creates a problem. If you look at the changes to Section 1, it says the party shall be divided into county organizations. Each county may have only one organization, which will have its own county central committee. Well, some county parties have chosen to do business differently. They've decided to have, individual regions and their own organization within that. So this seems to preclude that flexibility for county parties, and I would prefer to keep county parties as flexible as they want to be.
Ms. Lightfoot.
Actually, I'd like to change the first sentence. It seems to me that the party shall be divided into county organizations. Each county may have only one organization which shall have its own county central committee is too wordy and confused. Should be a single sentence. The state party shall exist of county central committees, period.
And that's an amendment to the main motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Did the Secretary note the amendment?
The party shall be composed of the county central committees, one for each county. Period. That's what we are. We're a collection of county central committees. And we don't need two sentences. We don't need to say there's only one per county. And we don't need to say they're an organization that has a county central committee. We are county central committees, period. That's our name. That's how we exist. So it should be a single sentence.
Okay, can you say it as your amendment? Can you read that one more time so that the Secretary can note that?
The party shall be composed of the county central committees.
And that would strike everything that's there right now and bring it down to one sentence.
Be one sentence.
Okay, is there a second to this amendment? It's been moved and seconded. At this point, this is an amendment, so we're speaking only on the amendment. Are you speaking on the amendment or the main motion?
Main motion.
Is anybody in line speaking on the amendment? Yes. No, the amendment that she just made is to simply just change the two sentences into one sentence that says the one sentence.
No, I'm not considering that. I just want it clear that it's composed of county central committees. We say 59 county central committees make up the state party.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so it was seconded. Is there any discussion on the amendment only? Mr. Starr.
I'd like to ask a question. Does this violate our membership structure, the way it's set up today?
That's what I'm wondering, is we define all this membership and then we say it's composed of counties. So which is it? Are you the membership or is it like the United States of America where it's 50 states forming a government versus direct democracy?
It's a good question. My understanding of this is that it's still, my understanding is that no matter what happens, the county central committees are county central committees, whether they have an organization or not, whether they've elected officers or not. And that's what the state membership is made of. So all state county central, all state members are also county central committee members and vice versa. So this wouldn't change anything on that. The only thing it would be changing is organized versus unorganized.
If there's an unorganized county, or people in that county, because
There's still members of that county's central committee, whether there's an organization or not. Whether there's an organization or not, they are still part. I believe somebody, if you want to, you know, yes.
I guess I don't understand then what the point is of chartering a county central committee if county central committees already exist by default. So you've got a number of counties that don't really exist because they're not organized, so the state party charters them. So
Any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, we're going to go to a vote on the amendment. This is the amendment only. It's a simple majority. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It fails. Now we're back to discussion on the main motion. At this point, I will say that if somebody wants to make a case that this entire motion is out of order, you could do so. I'm just saying, it sounds like these things are, you're allowed to do that, I believe, and then we can get a ruling. I didn't move it. Okay.
Point of information,
Yes.
who moved it?
Point of order. Could you please ask the parliamentarian if a proposal from the bylaws committee can be dismissed as out of order? We have a contradiction here.
And I will defer to the parliamentarian on this.
Board of Inquiry, isn't that what we literally just did?
No, that was on an amendment. This is about the main motion.
No, the amendment failed, and then I moved to say the main motion was out of order, and I got a second. So I'm literally just did what he's asking.
So there's a motion.
Clarify my question. I don't think you can object to considering a motion from the proposal from the bylaws committee. You can vote for it or you can vote against it, but you can't object.
I believe that if it's out of order and it was presented, just because it's presented wouldn't necessarily make it in order.
So generally, points of order that it's out of order has to be raised immediately, but this argument is that it violates the existing bylaws, so
Now
there's
that
no
we're
time limit on that, so they can still argue that it's out of order and let the body decide whether it's out of order.
Okay, so,
My
yes.
point again is that it's up to the chair to declare it out of order or
And
not. The body can't declare it to be out of order.
it was a point of order and
You can vote against it, but
The chair can allow the assembly to decide.
yeah, and I'm allowing the assembly to decide.
So what's the,
We're going to vote on whether or not, I believe at this point, we're at the point where we would vote on.
I'd like to hear the argument for why it's out of order before I actually make my own.
So wait, I don't understand where we're at here. There was a call to say that this motion was.
I was letting people know because it seemed that people were trying to say that this is against our bylaws and that because it's against other parts of the bylaws that it could be possibly out of order because it's not amending other parts of the bylaws that it would be then violating. I was just suggesting that that could be something that was brought up.
I understand that, but then immediately preceding that, somebody brought it up and got a second. I thought that's where we are.
That is where we are.
So how do we continue discussion if that's unresolved?
Because it was a point of order that he brought up afterwards saying that this was out of order, me letting you do that, and me suggesting it in the first place.
So what was the ruling of that?
point of order on the point of order. I think that you just, that voting it to be out of order is just the same as voting against it.
Okay.
So if you don't like it for whatever reason, you just vote
Okay. It's been raised. We're going to go to a vote on that just because that's where we're at. This will have the same effect as voting no on this motion, but because that was raised, it was raised as a motion, it was seconded. We will be voting
On what?
on if this is out of order, which is the same effect as it being voted down.
Okay.
Yes. It's a majority.
And just to strike it, why don't you rule one way or the other, and it doesn't matter which, and then they still get to decide what the majority vote, right? They can overturn the ruling or what.
Well, I just did that. So where we're at is, that's what I did. I'm accepting that it was out of order. I'm accepting the motion. So we're going to a vote. This vote will have the same effect as voting no on this motion. If this motion passes, it's the same as voting no on this motion. If this motion fails, we will go back to voting on the motion as to whether or not the main motion passes or fails. Are we?
So phrase it as the chair's ruled it out of order. The motion is to sustain the ruling of the chair.
Yeah. So right now is to sustain. Has it been appealed? The ruling of the chair has been appealed? Is that?
What is the ruling of the chair? That hasn't been clarified.
All right, the chair's ruled it out of order, but it's uncertain.
And I'm leaving it to the body.
It is assuming
Yeah.
a motion to appeal.
What's out of order?
So repeat what Alicia said because we can't hear.
The chair is uncertain, so therefore she left it to the body to determine whether this or not was out of order. It was moved and seconded that this is out of order. That's why we're going to a vote on this.
So vote yes to say it's out of order?
Yeah.
Vote no to say
Yes.
Yeah, point of information, what does voting yes mean and what does voting no mean? Voting yes kills it.
A vote, if you vote yes on this, that means that this proposal dies. If you vote no on this, then we're going to go to a vote on that proposal. So a yes vote kills this. Is there any other discussion on this and only this? We're going to a vote. This is a vote. Those in favor of saying that this is out of order, thereby killing it, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion passes. We're going to go to the next item on the bylaws report.
Point of information, Mark Jaffe from Contra Costa County. Would it be in order for me or another delegate to move that the entire remainder of the committee report be accepted?
No.
What?
No, under the rules, these are
No,
gone by.
we have to look, okay.
Yeah, so that they would have to be one by one.
Okay. So this is recommendation number 6, page 13, would amend bylaw 12, section 4, electronic mailings. And I believe this is actually the one that was on the floor last year and was tabled to the next day and was never picked up. So it's kind of a long one, but important. All right, so basically what this does is it allows for electronic meetings. Here, I'll read it. So the executive committee may, and then this part is stricken out, without meeting together, transact business by mail by voting on questions submitted by the secretary at the request of at least 2 members of the executive committee, unless a secret ballot is requested when the question is moved, which will require either postal mail ballots or technical capabilities beyond standard email. All such votes shall be counted and recorded by the secretary as roll call votes. The executive committee will complete voting any time after 48 hours from the transmission time of the mail ballot. And that would add transact business by email balloting when a motion is moved and seconded via email. All votes shall be counted and recorded by the secretary as roll call votes. Email motions will require the same number of votes as motions made at regular meetings. Alternates may vote, but their vote won't be counted unless corresponding at-large members fail to cast a ballot. Voting will end after 48 hours has passed and votes from 2/3 of the committee members have been received, or in 120 hours, whichever occurs first, up until the vote is finalized. A member or alternate may change their vote. If at the expiration of the applicable period, a quorum of the executive committee is not voted, the measure being voted upon shall be deemed to have failed. And then there's several areas that are stricken. It says, so the parts that are stricken are, if the motion has received yea votes from 2/3 of the executive committee members, or if the motion has received nay votes from 2/3 of the executive committee members, or after 120 hours in all cases, and an alternate's vote will not be counted, or will not be counted towards the 2/3 requirement unless it is definitely known that a corresponding voting member will not be participating. Members may change their vote up to the close of the voting period. And then it adds, it's a long one. The executive committee may also transact business by telephone conference or other electronic communications where the members can meet in real time. In such meetings, the normal rules of the committee apply as to quorums and voting. At least 7 days' notice is required if business is to be transacted in this fashion. And then secretary shall, and then it strikes this, preserve all such votes until the next meeting of the executive committee, at which meeting the executive committee shall order the disposition of such votes, and adds, keep a record of the motions and votes from email, telephone, and electronic balloting, and make them available in the same fashion as minutes from the executive committee meetings. So, at least 7 days is notice? Yeah, that would be members to the executive committee members. Not public notice, it would be just to the executive committee members.
Point of information, I apologize for interrupting. Credentialing is open for 10 minutes for anyone who came in late.
Thank you. So I know that there's concerns. I'm just going to speak briefly in favor of this. I know there's concerns that we would stop doing in-person meetings, and that would not be the case. We would still be doing the quarterly in-person meetings. This would just allow us, similar to the LNC and what they're doing, to use an electronic method such as Zoom to have meetings on a more regular basis to conduct business as a whole party instead of leaving like emergent types of issues to the operations committee. So this would really empower the executive committee to engage in more necessary activities without involving, calling for a meeting and giving 30 days notice and meeting in person somewhere, and they could address those issues more quickly, more rapidly. Anyway.
Okay, so we go to discussion on this bylaw amendment.
Well, I guess the presiding officer for this has changed, or no? Sorry, never mind. Okay, I move to divide this so that there's actually 3 separate motions. In other words, and so the first one would go up to the executive committee may also transact business by telephone, conference, or other electronic. Then that sentence, or that paragraph, the executive committee may also transact business by telephone, conference, or other electronic communications where the members can meet in real time, and the second sentence. That's a separate one, and then the secretary shall preserve all such votes shall be a third motion.
Okay. Second. It's been moved and seconded to divide the motion into 3 separate motions. Is there any discussion on division? Any objection to dividing them, or we would go to a vote?
If there's no objection,
there was no objection.
Otherwise, I'll argue in favor.
Okay. Okay, so now we have a divided motion. We will take each of them separately. The first of the 3 is the first paragraph, or the first portion as he divided. Is there discussion on that?
On the first part?
On the first part.
Yes, it's a horrible proposal. I'm sorry. Here's why. So what this proposes is that at 48 hours, once you have 2/3 of the people vote, you're done. So if you really want to game the system, you get together with a few friends at the 47th hour, you know it's close, we're all going to put in our votes at the 48th hour. As long as, hey, we got 10 votes in, you're done. The other 5 people can't vote. That's a bad thing. You want the existing system today where you got an opportunity for all 15 people to vote. So I urge you to vote this down.
Okay, discussion, and this is on the first part of the divided motion.
Right, yes, this is Rebecca Lau, San Francisco County, also an at-large member of the Executive Committee. I don't know why more members of the Executive Committee are not commenting to support this. We have email votes, we get our 48 hours, and I notice that a lot of people don't vote. I think that we could get a lot more business done if we batch a bunch of votes together online. That's all I have to say. I don't know why my other Executive Committee members, look, I've been to almost every meeting, driving. I drove 6 hours to Long Beach from San Francisco and back in one weekend. We need to do our business online just like everybody else.
Okay. This is, again, discussion on the first part of the divided motion.
Yes, I'd like to speak in favor of the proposal. Basically, I don't agree with Aaron. I mean, if you're talking about getting all your friends together, I mean, 2/3 of the committee is more than just a few of your friends. That's like the people that need to pass a motion is 2/3 of the committee. And frankly, nothing's stopping people who have another point of view on the committee from voting as well. I mean, it's good to speed it along. If you have 2/3 vote, it's an important measure, or it wouldn't be proposed by email. Pass it and get it over with. No, it says no. It says 2/3. If 2/3 have 2/3 of those, yeah. Okay, still.
Okay.
Right, but you still require the same number of votes as are required for the motion. So say if you need 10 votes for the motion, you've gotten the 10 votes. If you need 8 votes for the motion, you've gotten the 8.
Okay.
Yes, I'm speaking against the Bylaws Committee proposal. There is nothing in the current procedure. There is is not a question of not making use of email. This party has been making use of email ballots for 2 decades now. This has been in our bylaws for years and years. We're already doing that. There's nothing in the current procedure that stops the Executive Committee from using email ballots instead of having in-person meetings. It happens all the time. The time limit now for a ballot to be voted on, if everybody doesn't participate, is only 5 days. There's nothing stopping the Executive Committee from doing that. There's no problem here that needs to be addressed. The procedure already allows plenty of email voting.
Oh, right.
What it doesn't do is allow for a rushed email vote of only 2 days. And the reason that's dangerous, to have only some of the people voting and only allowing 2 days, is that, yes, email is more popular. We all have email. We all could respond in 2 days. But sometimes, people go away for a weekend. Maybe they don't want to be doing everything about the party during that weekend, whatever it is. What this would allow is for a motion to be put forward on a Friday evening and concluded by Sunday evening, and some of the Executive Committee members would never even know it happened. And as Aaron pointed out, all it would take is 10. And if it's a simple majority that's required, that means 6 in favor, 4 opposed, which is not a very, a lot of level of support, could get that passed, and the 5 other people might not even know it happened. And why is that important in this context, while in a normal meeting it's okay to have not everybody voting? The difference is that in a normal meeting, Robert's rules allow for debate before voting. In an email vote, you don't have that. There could have been debate. The idea could have been floating around before the vote was put forward, but not necessarily. There can be a surprise vote, a surprise ballot put up. People start voting for it before anybody even, most of the other people even read it. In a normal meeting, if there's a controversy, people talk about it before the voting starts. With email ballot, that doesn't happen. So not only do you need to have time for people to read it, you have to have time for people to discuss it. And when the current procedure gives people 5 days to get all their ideas out, potentially change their votes if they find good arguments. This would bypass that and allow things to happen much too quickly. There is no need for this because if it's a true emergency, if there's something that really needs to be done in 2 days, and it's so obvious that it would be harmful to the party to not pass it, this already allows that. The difference is that the current bylaw provision says if 2/3 of the people vote in favor, then the voting ends. This would allow controversial things to be done in 2 days.
Okay, thank you.
Kevin Moore, Contra Costa County. I want to reaffirm some of the things that were just said. The concern isn't whether people get their votes in, it's whether there's an opportunity for debate and another view being presented that, hey, if it was put forth on, at midnight in the morning on December 24th, end of the day on Christmas, a lot of people might not have seen it and maybe didn't have time to contribute their opinions. I also recognize the need to be able to get some things done quickly, and hopefully there's a happy medium where some of this business that needs to be conducted quickly and isn't a big deal can be handled without risking having major votes occur without having everyone's input involved. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Hinkle.
Mark Hinkle, Santa Clara. I wish to speak in favor of the motion. How many people here do not have a cell phone? Can I see a show of hands? Anybody that does not have a cell phone? Okay, one.
No, there's a couple.
I get my email on my cell phone, my tablet, my computer. If you want access, if you accept the responsibility of serving on the executive committee, be aware of what's going on. Read your email on your cell phone. I recently vacationed in the Caribbean. I had cell phone reception every time we stopped at a port. I could read my email out of the country. There is no excuse not to read your email over the weekends unless you choose to turn your cell phone off, which means you abdicate your responsibility to vote. And if you decide not to vote, that's on you. It's not on the executive committee. The proposal wants to increase the number of people who participate because the opposite venue is to have the operations committee where only 3 out of 5 people can actually make a decision rather than 2/3 of 15. It's more inclusive, more timely. Let's move on. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'd like to make one correction of a statement I made before. So what I said was that once you achieved a simple majority, it would be done and no one would have an opportunity to vote. It's actually worse than that. Because here's what's required. Under most proposals require 8 people to vote in favor by email in order for something to get adopted. As this proposal is written, after 48 hours, once 10 votes come in, it's closed. So if the vote is 6-4, then you can never get to 8 votes because voting's ended. We've had 10 people vote, we're done. You can never get to 8 votes. It's going to frustrate you more than help you. So right now, the way the system works is after 48 hours, voting ends if there's strong support. So if you have 10 people already voting yes or 10 people voting no between 48 hours and 122 hours, you're done, you've adopted something. That's great. But the way this thing is actually written, at 48 hours, if 10 people have voted and you don't have at least 8 of them that have voted yes, the motion fails and you can never get the other votes you need to actually get to where you want to get to.
Okay, this is still on the first part of the divided motion.
I'm an at-large member of the executive committee, and Rebecca called us out, said we should be up here speaking on this. Let me just go through my email real quick on the motions that I have received and voted on. from Angela. So I just do a simple search in my Gmail for Angela and motion. If I put those two things in there, motion to adopt the December 8th minutes, results of the motion, motion to recognize this and that, motion to oppose Senate bill, the stuff that we voted on. It's functional. So I oppose this. I don't think we need to speed it up. I think the debates are good. But I just wanted to mostly dispel what Rebecca said earlier. We're doing this already. We're doing email business.
Jose Castañeda, Los Angeles. I would like to speak against it. I think the big issue is that not enough people vote electronically. Some people just ignore it or don't pay attention to it. And I think that's really the big problem. If people were on top of things, then they would say, okay, I'm against this, vote against it, you're for it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And also, not everybody is stuck to their cell phone 24/7. Some people have a life.
Okay. We don't allow that. Further discussion on the first part only.
Well, I'd like to propose an amendment. Okay, amendment is to substitute instead of 2/3 of the membership of the executive committee, has voted until such time as a majority of the executive committee membership, of the total number of members on the executive committee has voted in favor or against.
Okay,
well, he better not do it.
Well, that's a better wording on that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, it wasn't seconded yet, so.
Yeah, okay. Bob agrees here. Okay. Instead of saying voting will end after 48 hours has passed and votes from 2/3 of the committee members have been received, it would be voting will end after 48 hours has passed and enough votes to pass the motion have been received. And that would be either a majority or 2/3 or whatever is needed in that regard. And again, if that doesn't happen, then it continues on to the 120 hours.
But it would be 48 hours, and what Aaron was saying before is once you had time to vote, it would stop before the 48 hours. Okay, well, let me ask you, okay, an amendment to this first part of the divided motion has been made. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the motion. We are going to just go to discussion on the amendment only.
I think this whole thing is a mess. I'm going to move to postpone these 3 items indefinitely so we can just go on to the next item of business.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to postpone this item indefinitely. Is there discussion on postponement?
I'd like to speak against that, because I especially want the next portion about the telephonic meetings. So I definitely don't want to postpone the matter. I think we should just debate and vote on measures and don't postpone them.
I'd like to move to postpone to a definite time. Specifically, this is the last item to be considered on.
Okay, so it's already been moved and seconded to postpone it indefinitely. We're on discussion right now, so we're not ready for another motion. I am going to let you all know that business ends today at 4 o'clock.
Is this debatable? Okay, move to amend Aaron's motion to read postpone to a definite time instead of indefinitely.
I'm checking the hierarchy. I don't have my paper copy. Can I borrow yours? Because I know where it is here. This part didn't change.
Your paper copy?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so.
Is it in order to, can you debate postpone indefinitely? That's the first question. And what's the hierarchy between definite and indefinite? So let me look.
One moment. But again, I do want to say that this meeting is set to adjourn today for the end of business at 4 o'clock, and that's 12 minutes from now.
All right, so indefinite postponement is debatable. Now I'm going to look and see what the hierarchy is between definite and indefinite, if you can move it while the other's pending. Postpone certain time. He can actually move definite postponement while indefinite is pending.
Okay, you can move definite postponement while indefinite is.
Okay, I move to postpone this to a definite time. Specifically, this will be the first item of business tomorrow morning. I believe that would require 2/3.
I believe so too. Okay, it's been moved to postpone it to a definite time of tomorrow morning at the beginning of business, which would be right after the Credentials Committee. Yes. We're postponing it. The motion right now is to postpone. And in the hierarchy, that can be amended, and he's proposed amending that. So we'd be voting on postponing to a definite time. If that passes, it would become the main motion.
Yes, and it would be the first item of business tomorrow morning.
And if that motion fails, we go to the motion to postpone indefinitely?
Correct.
Thank you.
So,
no.
right now,
Point
yes.
of information.
Yes.
Is this to postpone the entire topic or just the first third?
All three topics. Any other? Yes.
Can I say something? I'm Sam Sloan from San Francisco. The Bylaws Committee has had many meetings and long discussions. I happened to witness the last meeting they had earlier yesterday. That doesn't make them perfect, but just to say, let's postpone this indefinitely or to some future date, just kicking aside all the work that they've done. And I know some of the people here who always do this, and I think we should acknowledge that they did all this work and vote on it and decide it instead of postponing it for an indefinite period of time or even till tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, orders of the day have been called. I'm just going to say that at the end of today, which business ends in 10 minutes, that is the end of this report. Tomorrow morning, we would be starting with, if these motions don't pass, we would be starting with elections. So, we've got right now, and we can have a little bit more discussion on this, but right now, we're talking about the amended motion, which would postpone this to first order of business tomorrow morning after credentials. Is there any additional discussion on just that amendment?
I speak against this amendment. All three of them are bad. They haven't taken in consideration on a lot of the problems. This just needs to be considered and looked at. If you're going to do it, it needs to be done right and not hastily like this is.
Okay, and by the way, this right now, all we're talking about is not the good, bad, or indifferent of this proposal.
I know,
it's just simply whether,
I was
okay,
speaking against his motion. That was my reason for against this motion.
is so that we don't, yeah, okay.
I have a right to speak.
Okay, Mr. Dean, did you have something to say on this? Is there any other discussion on the amendment which would postpone definitely to tomorrow morning? Yes, sir.
Point of information, if we pick it up immediately first thing tomorrow morning, we would start with Ted's amendment, which I'm going to slightly amend by adding another word or two. That's where at the point where
We would be starting tomorrow exactly where we're at right now, which is the first part of the divided question that has been amended.
Point of order.
But we're not talking, what? Yes, sir.
I think you may start tomorrow, but you have no more time lapsed on this. So the only thing that will happen tomorrow morning is the very first thing is you're going to come to a vote on all three items.
Correct.
You would have to first extend time in order to do anything.
Actually, that was my point of information. Now, if we make this the first item tomorrow morning, will amendment.
We will need to then make a motion to extend time because we have lapsed on time. Okay, so if there's no further discussion on this, is there any further discussion? Because I would like to go to a vote on the amendment. Okay, we're voting on the amendment.
Point of information. Who called for orders of the day?
But we were still in this portion of the agenda item. I'm sorry? Orders of the day are that we adjourn in 7 minutes, but right now we're still in Bylaws Committee. So these are the orders of the day. We are going to go to a vote, and the vote is on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to put... Yeah, and this is to postpone definitely to a time certain of tomorrow morning at the beginning of business. All those in favor? All those opposed? Nay. The motion fails. We are now going to the motion to postpone indefinitely. Hearing no, yes. Question has been called. Any objections? All those in favor of postponing indefinitely, please vote. Please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Nay. It passes. It has been postponed indefinitely. This will leave us 6 minutes for the final bylaw committee.
I'd like to move to suspend the rules to take up the bylaws committee proposal number 8, which I think a lot of people find interesting, as opposed to number 7, which deals with minutia of membership suspension. I think it's something that we could better make use of our 7 minutes.
Okay, the motion has been made and it's been seconded. This is a substitute motion. It requires a 2/3. All those in favor of going to bylaws amendment? Yes, sir. There's no discussion on a suspension of rules. All those in favor of suspending the rules to take up bylaw 8, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Okay, it failed, so we will go on to bylaw numbers, or bylaw, the next one on the thing, and we have 5 minutes left.
All right, so we move on to recommendation number 7, page 16, which would amend bylaw 5, section 5, membership suspension. With this, it would add language. There's only one word that's stricken, so I'll just read the way that it would read if this passes. The only word that's stricken is 15 days. Or later on in this paragraph, this first section. The executive committee shall have the power to suspend a county or state central committee membership for failure to maintain all the qualifications of membership established in section 1 or for cause, and then added is suspension of membership shall require a 2/3 supermajority of the eligible positions on the executive committee for approval. The secretary shall notify the member of the suspension via personal service or registered mail immediately after adoption. Notification of the suspension is subject to written appeal within, and then this changes it to 30 days instead of 15 days of notification. And the rest of it is unchanged.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes for discussion. Mr. Starr?
So I'm going to propose an amendment that we only change one thing, which is 15 days to 30 days. The other parts of this I have problems with. So the first problem I have is the sentence that begins suspension of membership shall require a 2/3 supermajority of the eligible positions on the executive committee for approval. All you're doing is duplicating what you have in bylaw 12 section 6. And the problem is when you put duplicate language throughout your bylaws, you run the risk that at some point in the future you're going to change one and you're not going to change the other. So you never really want to do that. So you definitely don't want that. As far as the next sentence, the secretary shall notify the member of the suspension via personal service or registered mail via after. You know what? Email works just fine these days. Everybody has email. Often the person who's being suspended is right there, being suspended in front of everybody, and he's being told right there. It doesn't make sense to send him a personal, a certified letter that he's been suspended when he's there being suspended. So the only thing I would propose is just change 15 days to 30 days. That's reasonable. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to amend the motion to change 15 to 30. And that's the full amendment. We're going to discussion on the amendment only.
Yes, Sam Sloan from San Francisco. I have a legal question to ask. The question is this. I happen to research this particular issue. Other people research this particular issue in New York State. And what we found is that New York State, as now is a recognized party, thanks to Larry Sharp, by the way, who made us a registered party. he was the one who made us ready. Mr. Sharp is the one who did it, finally, after a tremendous amount of infighting. But my question is this. In New York State, it is illegal to suspend or expel a person from a political party. Anybody can join a political party. Anybody can call themselves Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green, Blue, Communist, anything else they want to. You simply cannot expel people. Yes. Okay.
You can't expel a registered voter, but you can expel a central committee member. It's in our bylaws that you can do so. And that's not expelling a Libertarian from the state. That's talking about our state central committee. I believe that that is the case, and that's what I would rule on that.
Okay, so all this is expelling the person from the central committee, not from the...
Correct. Anybody can be a Libertarian any day they want. This would be expelling. I'm just speaking to this. I will tell you that we are now, per the orders of the day, we are at the time of adjournment. Yes, sir.
Is there any reason why we can't stay here for another 15 minutes?
You just took the words out of my mouth. Unless there's a motion to extend time. It's been moved to extend time for 15 minutes. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to amend that.
Yes, sir.
Just want to extend enough time to just get through this one proposal. That would be my proposal.
Okay, that would be an amendment.
So this is expired, so there's 13 minutes and 13 seconds left on this item.
Yeah, there's 13 minutes and 13 seconds left on this item, period. So we can vote on the amendment to do it until the conclusion of this rather than the 15 minutes. Is there any objection? Okay.
My question was because there are some other interesting things that are in the bylaws.
No, I understand that.
That's why I proposed we have enough time.
But he made his substitute, so we vote on that first. Okay. And if that fails, then we go to yours. Okay. So on the amendment, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Nay. Okay, that fails on the motion to extend time by 15 minutes, as we've wasted some time doing this. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Yeah, that's not 2/3. It didn't pass. So now we are going to an immediate vote on the amendment as, can we read that? His amendment.
His amendment was to change 15 to 30.
Okay, all of those in favor of the...
I'm sorry, I thought that already failed. It hasn't failed yet?
No, no.
So this is the vote to just change 15
that word.
to 30, not make any other change?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. The substitute motion becomes the main motion. We've already gone to closing all pending questions, so we're going to go to an immediate vote on the main motion. All those in favor, please say aye. And the main motion is as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion passes. So that bylaws amendment has passed. That
Chair, I move to adjourn. We're already adjourned.
We're adjourned.
I'm just making sure.
We are adjourned until tomorrow morning. I wanted to make an announcement for everybody. So originally in the program, we had that the banquet tonight was in the same room as where we were today for lunch. That has changed. We are now in the Contra Costa room, which is over across the way where the tables were. We will be there for the banquet. So if you're coming to the banquet, please know that if you go there, you're going to get nothing.
Point of information.
Yes.
Will this room be secured?
And by the way,
or what
we're
is
already adjourned, so it doesn't have to be a point of information.
Sorry, force
That's
of habit.
Yes, the room is going to be secured.
Okay.
We're leaving the AV in here, and the room will be secured and locked. Did you want to leave other stuff in here?
Well, not if I want to have access to it. That's why I was asking. So.
There will not be access.
Okay, so everybody should take everything out of this room that they want with them tonight.
Yes.
Draft
and right now there's, if you go to go to the speakers agenda. There are things happening right now at 4 o'clock that you'd probably be interested. I believe Boomer Shannon is speaking right now. We also have the county organization meeting tonight, so I hope everybody enjoys their night. I look forward to seeing you all at the banquet. And oh, by the way, before the banquet, just anybody that wants to come up to the upper terrace, we're going to have a cash bar. We're going to have a little bit of musical entertainment. Anybody can come. It's free, except for if you want to drink, and then it's not free.
Draft minutes are available online if you want them for today.